Mad saying Twitter is censoring free speech. That after the social media site placed fact checks on some of his recent tweets. Don Drung reports.
President Trump says Twitter tried to censor free speech when it placed this fact-checking notice on his tweets on mail-in ballots and fraud. And the partisan divide truly opened up. One user tweeted today, "Fact-checking is not censorship. Trump's lying needs to be kept in check." On Twitter this afternoon, actor James Woods pointed out that the head of Twitter's fact-checking team has a history of anti-Trump and anti-conservative tweets. Here's UNO political analyst Ed Shervinack.
You look at Silicon Valley, you look at, everyone who's involved in social media, they tend to be liberal, and so conservatives are already attacking social media, and so we should expect more of that, particularly with the campaign ahead.
In a separate tweet, President Trump vowed that social media platforms would be, quote, strongly regulated or shut down before they can silence conservative voices.
Certainly there'd be some First Amendment issues there, that government should not be telling individuals or companies what they can and can't say.
Shervinack says if anything, Twitter has historically allowed bad information to live in its forum. And there is plenty of misinformation on Twitter. A study by Carnegie Mellon University published just last week found that nearly 50% of the Twitter accounts discussing the reopening of America from COVID-19 were actually automated programs or bots.
We're going to have to be careful about what we believe when it comes across social media. I think there's just no way for them to self-regulate.
Shervinack says in fairness, Twitter will now have to fact-check Joe Biden. This is an election year after all. Twitter has long been a venue for loud opinions. The question now is, will facts be heard over all the shouting? Don Drung, Eyewitness News.
President Trump tweeted there would be, quote, big action against social media, but the president can't unilaterally regulate or close companies that would require congressional involvement.